Hello, this is the first of a set of 4 videos on the overall pattern of Babi-Baha'i expansion. This one providing a brief general view of the early period of expansion up to the early 1890s. The other 3 will deal respectively with what I have termed the internationalization of the Baha'i movement, here roughly dated from 1892 up to 1953, the period of global expansion from the 1950s onwards, and finally the concept of cultural breakthroughs, which I see as fundamental to understanding the process of Baha'i expansion. The first 3 videos of the set are based on an article I wrote on Babi-Baha'i expansion in the Concise Encyclopedia of the Baha'i Faith, first published by Oneworld of Oxford in 1999. The 4th video is based on ideas presented in my Cambridge book, The Babi and Baha'i Religions from Messianic Shi'ism to a World Religion. For more details, see that work and also my Introduction to the Baha'i Faith, again from Cambridge University Press. I will give the publication details of all these books in the notes below the video. Although taking different forms over time, there has been a strong missionary emphasis in both the Babi and Baha'i religions since their origin in the 19th century, with a determined effort to increase both the number of adherents, the geographical range of their locations, and, in the Baha'i case, their religious and cultural diversity. This is reflected in the present global diffusion of the Baha'i faith, such that by 2006 there were Baha'is living in 191 countries and 46 dependent territories across the globe, in some cases in substantial numbers. There is also a wide diversity of membership today, with over 2,000 tribes and ethnic groups already represented by the 1980s. Geographical and numerical expansion of the Baha'i faith and its religio-cultural diversification have been closely interlinked, notably in a series of what I have termed geocultural breakthroughs, whereby Baha'i communities have been established in an ever more diverse range of religious and cultural milieu. I will talk about this concept in more detail in the 4th video. 3 stages and 3 worlds of Babi-Baha'i expansion can be identified. First, an initial Islamic stage from the Bab's declaration in 1844 up to about the time of the passing of the Baha'i prophet founder Baha'u'llah in 1892, in which Babism and the early Baha'i movement were largely confined to the environing culture and society of the Islamic Middle East and its cultural extensions. Secondly, an international stage from the accession of Baha'u'llah's eldest son, Abdul-Baha, to leadership of the Baha'i cause in 1892 up until about 1953, during which the Baha'i missionary expansion succeeded in transcending the religion's Islamic roots, in particular by gaining a small but intensely active Western following. And finally, the present global stage from about 1953 onwards, in which the Baha'i faith has begun to assume the characteristics of a small-scale world religion, and larger numbers of adherents have been gained, particularly in some parts of Africa, Asia, and Latin America, regions we might describe as a Baha'i third world, that is, outside of both the religion's original Islamic homeland and the West. This 3rd stage incorporates the period from the collapse of the communist regimes of the Soviet Union and its former satellites in the 1989-1992 period, and the development of a far more permissive attitude towards religion in those countries which have remained communist, which has enabled the Baha'is to finally establish themselves in every country in the world, with the probable exception of North Korea. The first stage of Babi-Baha'i growth began with the declaration of the Bab in 1844 and continued until roughly the passing of Baha'u'llah in 1892. Both the Babis and, to a lesser extent, their early Baha'i successors were largely confined to a Middle Eastern Islamic milieu, so I have termed this the movement's Islamic period, although quite clearly the Baha'is were already developing a vision of their religion which transcended its Islamic roots. Babism emerged as a sectarian movement within Shia Islam and underwent its own complex pattern of development before being effectively extinguished in a series of bloody crackdowns from 1849 to 1852. The initial roots of the Babi movement lay in Shi'ism, a distinctively esoteric form of Twelver Shi'ism, and in the particular context of the succession crisis following the death of the second Shi'i leader, Sayyid Kazem Rashdi. Of note, all of the Bab's first circle of disciples, the Letters of the Living, were Shi'is, and the initial expansion of the Babi movement was largely confined within the existing network of Shi'i communities. Some transcendence of this Shi'i milieu later occurred, both because the Bab exercised a wider appeal at a popular level in terms of his Messianic claims and as a perceived Islamic holy man, and as a result of the conversions of prominent non-Shi'i clerics such as Mullah Muhammad Ali Hujjat and Sayyid Yahya Darabi Vahid, most of whose followers in the towns of Zanjan and Neiris also became Babis, making these towns major Babi strongholds. Despite this expansion beyond the Shi'i milieu, the Babis remained firmly part of the world of sectarian Shi'ism, however. Whether or not Babism, in its original form, could ever have expanded more widely is unknown. It was all but obliterated as a movement by 1852. It is important to note that the Babi movement that subsequently re-emerged in the late 1850s under the direction of Baha'u'llah in Baghdad was significantly different from early Babism. Reviving the Babi movement, Baha'u'llah simultaneously transformed it, laying the basis for expansion beyond the Babi community, both by addressing Sufi and Judeo-Christian themes, and by presenting Babi beliefs in a written style which could appeal directly to literate Iranian Muslims, and which did not need to be mediated through clerical leaders. Later, from the 1870s onwards, the basis of Baha'i appeal was further widened as Baha'u'llah presented a vision of socio-political reconstruction, including Western ideas of constitutionalism, as well as a vision of a new international world order. Whilst his son, and later successor, Abdul-Baha, circulated a proposal for the modernization of Iran in the form of the book The Secret of Divine Civilization. And Baha'i teachers, notably Mirza Abul Fazl, developed Baha'i apologetics addressed specifically to the Jews, Christians, and Zoroastrians. Correspondingly, when the newly emerging Baha'i faith began to expand from the 1860s onwards, its target population was much wider than that addressed by the Babis. Most of the new Baha'is were still of Iranian Muslim background, but they were joined by small numbers of others: Sunni Muslims in the Ottoman Empire and Egypt, Jews and Zoroastrians in Iran, and Levantine Christians. There was also wider geographical expansion. The Babis had been effectively confined to Iran and the Shia areas of Ottoman Iraq, but there were Baha'is amongst the Shia populations of Russian Caucasia, Iranian migrants in Russian Turkestan, and Muslims and Zoroastrians in India and Burma. Small groups of Iranian Baha'is also established themselves in Iraq, Turkey, Lebanon, and Egypt. By 1892, the year of Baha'u'llah's passing and Abdul-Baha's accession to leadership, a distinctive Baha'i religion had come into being. Thank you.